Hey guys, thank you so much all for coming down here today. Welcome to the panel discussion hosted by the Society for Young Philanthropists. As some of you might know, over the course of this week we've been hosting a series of events to celebrate the launch of Giving Tuesday in the UK. And Giving Tuesday is an initiative launched by the UN Foundation, and it's just all about getting people to try and give on the first Tuesday of every December. And the great news is today is the first ever Giving Tuesday in the UK. And so to mark this very special day, we've got a very special panel. So guys, do you want to introduce yourself? Rhea, why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay, well my name's Nadia Manzoor and I run Sarah Charlton Foundation with Antonio Packard, who's sitting in the audience today. We are a grant-making charity that aims to combat domestic violence. We do two things. We fund services that help victims of domestic violence, and we also fund preventative work as well. At the moment we've been running a campaign with two other charities to criminalise domestic violence within the UK, and it's going quite well.
Great, thank you. Zoe.
I'm Zoe. I've come from the National Association for Children Alcoholics. We are a Bristol-based national helpline providing information, advice and support for children and young people affected by alcoholism.
Great, and I'm Jenny Dawson. I am founder of a business called Rubies in the Rubble, which is a food brand started on the fact that I believe there's enough food for everybody. The world has enough resources to feed everyone, yet so many are going without, and at the same time we're wasting a third of it that we can be tightening up our supply channels. So we at the moment have a range of chutneys, and we're just launching some more products, but all built on the same belief.
Fantastic. My name's Andrew Cook. I work for a charity called Walking with the Wounded, which is a military charity which funds the retraining, reskilling and re-education of wounded servicemen and women suffering either from physical, mental or social injury. And by social injury we're talking about homelessness, veterans in police custody and such like. So.
Great. And I'm Nadia Manzoor, and I sit on the committee for the Society of Young Philanthropists. So enough who we are, I think let's dive straight in. I kind of wanted to start by thinking about the two sides of Christmas. For me, when I think about Christmas, I think about sort of roaring fires and my little cousins' faces when they open their presents, adorable. Or like my dad sort of laughing at the same joke in the Christmas cracker every single year. And I'd love to sit here and say that's what Christmas is for everybody. But I think the harsh reality is that Christmas for many is actually when they're at their most vulnerable. And I think, guys, some of you may have had first-hand experience of victims of that cruel side of Christmas, and it'd be great if you could share them with us.
Fine, well, I'll kick off then. You're absolutely right. And actually, it's whenever I go and see individuals who are looking at supporting us, it's I always feel very humbled when they want to support us. And you come to an event like this, and you realise just how extraordinary a lot of the other charities are. So. And I think if we can work together after this, it would be even better, because I'm sure there's some common ground. But specifically with regards to this time of year, we've launched a programme recently called Walking Home for Christmas, where we're trying to get as many people across the UK to ditch their public transport, bikes, cars, whatever, and walk home this Christmas for veterans who don't have a home to walk to. 1 in 10 rough sleepers in the UK is a veteran. Up to 10% of the homeless community are veterans, which is a very disproportionate cohort of society. So, we deal with a lot of individuals who, again, this Christmas will be either living on the streets or if they're luckier than those, living in sheltered accommodation, which is still a far cry from where we want it to be.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I suppose in terms of business and with Rubies in the Rubble, we started with a kitchen where we work with disadvantaged or vulnerable women, most of them coming out of either traffic backgrounds, prostitution, and a lot of addictions and problems with either alcoholism or drugs. And Christmas time was always a really hard time. When we started, I was really wanting to make community in the business and provide them a sense of purpose and meaning and something to wake up for and to be part of. But actually Christmas time always broke down. Oh, this is going to always broke down.
it was such a battle for us. I think it brings up a lot of problems.
Brings off you can't
go back.
Go back.
It often brings up a lot of problems with people because there's pressure for family. It's almost wanting the perfect family, the perfect situation, and with us in the kitchen, people seem to go back to their drinking and addictions and everything that was sometimes buried in the year came up and was really lightened. So it's made me a lot more aware of what other people's situations are and the need for community and for being part of something and feeling love and time from other people. So we're not working with those women anymore, but it's just passing people on the street and things, making it so much more aware that saying hello, being friendly to people really does make a difference in someone's day.
Okay, so from the perspective of a child and alcoholic at Christmas, I think for a child it's very difficult not to get excited about Christmas. From the end of November through December at school, you're making crafts, you see on television the Coca-Cola advert, it's Christmas time, everyone at school is so excited for Christmas, adults telling you it's Christmas and you can't help but be excited, but then I think often growing up with alcoholic parents, Christmas is just another day that comes and goes, but with the extra element of pressure that I should be looking forward to this. This is a wonderful time for celebration, for giving and receiving, and often children of alcoholics, they're in a situation where they're looking forward to a day that never actually comes, an event that never actually comes. And I think the difficult thing is often addiction, certainly in terms of alcohol addiction, it's very hidden from view, and often alcoholic parents can be functioning alcoholics, and these children don't know any difference. They get up, go to school, get on with life, not really knowing that it's not normal. And 6.2 million children in the UK are living with addicted parents who are largely hidden from view, and we don't know, we don't see, and they don't find it that easy to speak up about it. For example, we have a story on our website from a girl named Mandy. She was 14 and growing up with alcoholic parents, she was always responsible for looking after her younger brother, and she very much became a carer of not only her younger brother but her parents as well. And she had to wait for her parents. Her father was an alcoholic. He'd done the usual, passed out on the sofa. Her mother had taken herself away to go and have some quiet time, and Mandy found the opportunity to call the helpline. And she said that she was only able to speak to NACOA, speak to a counsellor on the phone when she couldn't see their face. And I think that just highlights the fact that so much of this happens, and we're just so unaware of how many children are struggling.
I think it's really interesting because, kind of feeding off what you just said as well, is that we always assume that Christmas is the time, you're in the home, you're with your family, and it's so much fun. But the thing is that when your family home is one which is an abusive one, that can be so much more difficult. The thing about domestic violence that is within the home, it is much more of a hidden crime. And so during Christmas, when you're more in the home, when there's alcohol involved, when there's a lot more kind of pressure on the family, that's when things can really get out of hand. And normally, the police and other charities do see a spike in domestic violence over the Christmas period. And that's quite interesting because you assume that Christmas is a time, as we said, for family and for spending time and for bonding, but actually sometimes having, a perpetrator and a victim in a room that they have to be together over a Christmas period, that's also quite dangerous as well. 2 women a week get killed every week by their partner or ex-partner, and during Christmas, that can obviously increase. So it is quite a scary. It can be quite a scary time.
I think what's quite interesting as well is, and this is why forums like this are so useful, is we've launched a program recently for veterans in police custody, and it costs the taxpayer about £140,000 a year for someone to go through the courts and spend 12 months in prison. Now the pilot scheme that we're running at the moment, which is just across East Anglia, Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex, in the last 12 months there's been 160 veterans in police custody in Norfolk and Suffolk, two of the lowest crime counties in the UK and two of the most dispersed rural communities in the UK. 50% of them are there because of domestic violence, and that domestic violence is caused because of alcohol and because of mental injury. And so I think for me it just really highlights how important it is that you are talking to myself, we're talking to each other, and we're approaching this in a collegiate and collaborative manner. Because an individual doesn't necessarily just have one issue that they're trying to overcome. And there's no point in us going in to talk to them from a veteran's perspective in isolation, because it's not going to sort the problem out long term. And so it's crucial that we tap into the expertise of other charities and other bodies, be it the constabularies, be it homeless charities, whatever, to ensure that the individual is getting a holistic approach to resolving their situation and ensure they can overcome the challenges they're facing. And I think this just highlights how important that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. I'm kind of shocked by some of those things, especially in Worcester area. And I think something we didn't touch upon is loneliness as well. So we touched upon, but 500,000 pensioners this year will spend Christmas Day alone. Now, I think that's an alarming stat, completely alone. And we have an ageing population, and that's such a real problem. And actually, don't ask me how I know this stat, but apparently on Christmas Day last year, 1,556 people filed their tax returns online on Christmas Day. And it's kind of funny, but it's also very sad, because you think, what is going on in your home that you feel that sort of this is the time to do that kind of job. So, I mean, clearly there's a problem. I think that's very clear from what you're saying, but then I think the real question is, what can we do about it? Sort of people like me, the guys in the audience, guys sort of listening to this, what can they do to help? Thank you.
$6 million question. So, I mean, as I just said a minute ago, there's a number of different elements to any problem in society that needs to be overcome, be it homelessness, be it hunger, be it alcohol addiction, whatever. And I think for me, we're very fortunate with the charity that we have. The brand that we've created through our expeditions, although they are funded by corporate sponsors, I know, not by fundraising, is very much that our supporters, are not armchair supporters. They get up, they do things. I do think there's a lot of responsibility and onus on the charities to be creative and innovative with how they fundraise and providing platforms for individuals to engage with them. I think if you can engage with a charity and meet the beneficiaries if possible, that's going to be very powerful. But there are a number of different causes out there which are doing extraordinary work, and I think at this time of year it's crucial that people just take a step back and just have a bit of a think, to themselves about what it's all about. And my wife gets very wound up when she sees people write Xmas instead of Christmas, and I think that although someone far smarter than her or I did tell us that there was some sort of Greek meaning to the word X, but anyway, the point is that we all need to take a step back and have a real long hard look at ourselves about what Christmas is all about. It's a really important time of year. Yes, it's festive, it's enjoyable, but it is about family, it's about love, sharing, and giving. And there's a lot of people out there that aren't in a position to benefit from that. So just find a cause that you're passionate about, you have empathy with, get in touch and find out how you can support.
Second everything Andrew said, and also from my own point of view, I've lived in London now for 6 years. 5 of those 6, I would say I didn't know any of my neighbours, anyone around me, and having lived in one place for 4 years and not realising that I just didn't know anyone. I never bothered to get to know them. You occasionally passed them, it was almost embarrassing when you did, and it was sort of an awkward hello, but I've recently moved again, and this time made a real effort to get to know my neighbours and on a first-time basis to know what they do day to day, to know some things that they're struggling with, to spend a bit of time, and realising that, especially in where I live, most of them live alone, and especially the elderly, and making a bit of a thing of sort of checking up on them when I come back from holiday and things. And I think, especially around Christmas time, it's a really practical thing that we can all do of actually in your community. Who is it that it doesn't cost you a thing just to go and spend 5 minutes knocking on someone's door? They might think you're a bit odd, but after the first 2 minutes, they're going to love it, and it could just make their day.
Just going back to your snippet about filing tax returns on Christmas Day, I think without getting too personal, speaking from experience of parental alcoholism in the family around holiday times, the sort of normality of filing a tax return actually sounds like a wonderful Christmas Day, to be honest. And I think a lot of children with alcoholism in the family and addicted parents might be inclined to agree that, dare I say it, normality would be much more appealing than the fear and dread and apprehension of threats of violence and disorder at Christmas. And I think, I don't know, you asked what can we do about it. I don't know if it's something that can be fixed overnight, like Andrew was saying. It's something that requires a very collective approach, and these things take time and enthusiasm from not just individuals, but as a society and in general. And I think, like you're saying about loneliness, for me that is the one thing that stands out, is especially speaking from the perspective that I am trying to be here for children in families with addicted parents at Christmas. I think we owe these children just an awareness, and like I said previously, children of alcoholics often aren't the first to speak up and say there's a problem here, A, because they don't know any differently, and B, because there's a fear of I don't know, letting their family down or breaking the vow of silence that often exists in families where parents struggle with alcoholism. But I think we owe these children an awareness, and we have a duty to break that shell of loneliness. I don't know how we do that, but at least by talking about it in events like these, I think we're getting there. It's a start, or at least owning up to the fact that we have a problem.
I think it was really interesting what you were saying about that kind of fear and anxiety and dread of the threat of violence or violence, and that is something that, you know, we would see a lot in, you know, violent households as well, where there's domestic violence. And I mean, on a personal level, I always try and think that over Christmas I always end up being so grateful for having my family around and having such, you know, being able to have such amazing food, amazing laughter, but there is always that kind of bittersweet moment of this, a little bit of this is fleeting, and also that other people are not experiencing what I'm experiencing right now. And I think that awareness is really important, and if we are as a society going to change and going to go forward and be more aware of the people around us who aren't as fortunate as us, we need to be consciously thinking about that. You know, whether it is at Christmas when you're looking around and you're seeing your family and you're thanking, you know, your lucky stars that you're able to do this. It's just like saying that little prayer for the people who aren't, you know, and just being aware of that. On a more charity level, we've done a lot of stuff at Christmas to kind of help as well. We've had a magician come to visit a refuge and help some of the victims there, just kind of get their mind off it with some entertainment. We've hosted a big carol concert, which is an amazing fundraising opportunity, but as well it's a nice time to kind of make that link between Christmas and actually violence in the home as well, and that kind of awareness that I was talking about earlier. So I think it's a little bit of both. It's the kind of, as you were saying, kind of being a little bit more out there, thinking of new ways in which to fundraise and to get involved. At the same time, having that awareness of actually I'm very lucky and I want to share that luck with other people as well. So whether it is, you know, collecting old gifts or collecting old clothes and dropping them off at a refuge, or just, you know, letting someone know who, you know, that you're there for them if they need them, or whatever it is, it's just kind of spreading that goodness, so then that goodness will then spread again tenfold. I think that's an important part as well.
And just sort of following on from that, I think sort of, as everyone touched on, the little things really make a difference. So, you know, you can go out and buy a pack of charity Christmas cards. You know, so you don't have to buy them from Paper Chase, whatever. They donate 10 pence to charity, and that's something. Well, I had a taxi driver the other day actually, and he was telling me that a few years ago, McDonald's did an offer on Big Macs that would buy one get one free. And he said he had the most bizarre guy get in his cab and ask him to take him to the McDonald's drive-thru. And they bought 50 Big Macs, and they got 50 Big Macs free, and then they drove around London dropping them off at homeless shelters. And I just thought, that's just such a great thing. You know, anyone can do that. That probably costs 50 quid, but the difference it makes. And sort of, you know, like you were saying, Jenny, just checking on your neighbours. You know, I just think those little bits make a huge difference, and anyone can do that. It's also probably worth mentioning that the Society for Young Philanthropists are in the process of launching an app called Give London, which is all about sort of incentivising people to give and helping them to connect with volunteering opportunities. So, watch this space when that comes out, because that will really help. So we're talking about what kind of, we can all do. I was then thinking about sort of taking that one step further and thinking about, do corporations, or actually even individuals who have greater social influence, actually have a responsibility, a duty to be more socially responsible, especially at this time of year? And I'll tell you why I started thinking about this. It's because of the John Lewis Christmas advert. I know you just played one earlier, Zoe, but I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's about a little boy and Monty, his penguin. And the advert cost £1 million to make. And if you've seen it, you see, I mean, it's nothing special. Quote me on that. But £1 million is an awful lot of money. And worse than that, £7 million is being spent on the marketing campaign around it. And that advert, within 24 hours of sort of being shown on TV, had 4 million hits on YouTube. There are 39 pieces of merchandise related to it. One of those is Monty the Penguin, the soft toy, which cost £95 and sold out within a few hours of the advert sort of going on TV. And they're now sort of selling on eBay for hundreds and hundreds of pounds. I mean, you can buy Monty and his girlfriend for £500. I mean, to me, that is remarkable. And so that led me to think, if you had such magnitude of influence, couldn't that be used for some sort of good? And what do you think about that? I really wanted to share with you the Sainsbury's advert, and you may have seen it, but I really like to share it with you again. So I think, guys, if you want to sort of turn around a little bit. the chocolate bar at the end is the chocolate bar that the English soldier was given for Christmas in the first place. And that chocolate bar is a real chocolate bar in that you can go into Sainsbury's and buy it for £1, and 50 pence of each sort of chocolate bar sold goes to the Royal British Legion. Now, I read in the Daily Mail online, so not necessarily a reliable source, but I read that those chocolate bars are selling at 5,000 chocolate bars an hour. So that means that's £420,000 a week going to the Royal British Legion. I think that's incredible. But not everybody agrees, and actually I've got a couple of press quotes. The Express says, upset viewers have slammed Sainsbury's for romanticising the horrors of the First World War in its Christmas advert in order to lure shoppers. And the Daily Mail says, is this the best Christmas or advert or the most exploitative? So guys, I mean, what do you think? I know you're probably a great one to start with, given that you sort of walking through the window.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's two things. Well, I come from a marketing and media background before I went into the charity world a few years ago, so you can look at this through two heads. You can look at it from a marketing perspective, and you can say it's beautifully shot. It's a charming, in the loosest sense of the word, advert. They've got a hell of a lot more coverage for their marketing spend. They've created the debate. So all of those things, the marketing director would sit there and go, fantastic job, well done. You look at it from a fundraising perspective, and you sit there and go, well, it's a heck of a lot of money that the Legion are raising. It's going to go to a good cause. They're doing a lot of good work. So again, on the face of it, seems fantastic. I think, we were talking about this at some friends over for lunch at the weekend, and we were all quite torn. I mean, my views is that I'm not that thrilled with it. I think that, again, you start entering the debate of corporate responsibility versus corporate philanthropy. And there's a big difference between the two. Corporate philanthropy, great, they're generating income for the Legion, that's going to go to good cause, fantastic. But actually, when you look at corporate responsibility, what I would have preferred Sainsbury's to have done, and I guess people who disagree with me might say I'm being pedantic, I would rather they have actually sponsored a Legion advert and actually focused on the Legion around the centenary, and then maybe had a Sainsbury's logo at the end saying we sponsored this. So it's not so overtly commercialising the trenches. Part of the other issue I have with it is you actually walk away thinking, what a beautifully shot commercial. You had a lovely robin redbreast there, and the snow falling, and it was all very charming. There were no rats eating dead bodies. There was no blood. There was, no realism. And I think, that to me, with the people that I sort of deal with on a daily basis, they're not looking for sympathy. They're not looking to be called heroes. They were doing a job that they knew that that there was a good chance that they'd get injured. But what they are looking for is a degree of realism and a degree of support and understanding of what they've been through. And I'm not going to repeat them now, but I've heard some pretty horrific things in the last few years. And so the one thing I would walk away from it saying, it's great, the Legion are going to earn lots of money out of it, it's going to go to a good cause, but it does leave a bit of a thistle in the throat, as it were, in terms of how beautiful they have set the scene for what was one of history's most traumatic and most destructive periods. What happens if in 10 years' time somebody does an advert commemorating the anniversary of the Holocaust? Do we accept that if it's glorified? Not glorified, if it's delivered in a manner which is commercialised. So I think we need to be very careful. I think it would be churlish of me to sit here and moan about the Legion. We do a lot of work with them, and it's great they're going to raise some decent money. But I just think Sainsbury's could have done it in a far more a subtle way, which would have, for me, made me think that they were working with a charitable cause for completely the right reasons. And sometimes I wonder whether their reasons really are that moral.
I think it's a really difficult balance to strike because, like we were saying before, Christmas is a time for family and giving and receiving and joy. It's a joyous occasion, and we're very reluctant to let anything slightly sinister enter our sphere of consciousness around Christmas time. We don't like to think about people in pain. We don't like to think about things that might possibly make us feel guilty for enjoying our own Christmases and fat turkeys and fat bellies, dare I say. And I don't know, when I first saw the Sainsbury's advert, I thought it was a bit crass. I thought it didn't really sit all well with me. I thought, is this romanticising the trenches? Is this... I didn't think it was entirely necessary, but now, I don't know, I start to question, actually, maybe I'm just as guilty of the mindset I was referring to before. I don't like to think about nasty things at Christmas. I don't want to think about the war. I want to think about presents and tinsel and cheesy Christmas songs. So I don't know, but then I think you made a very valid point that it is about finding the balance between we want to spread a message, you want to raise awareness, you want to make people think about wider issues at Christmas, but then it is a difficult balance to strike between getting a message across and over-egging the commercialism and the romanticism, I suppose.
Well, I'm going to be a bit more controversial. The first time I saw the advert, I'm not going to lie, I may have cried. And I did think about it, because I think, yes, the Battle of the Somme is one of the saddest things I've ever read, I've ever heard about. It's just the way how dark and ugly humanity can be, and how little respect for life. You know, it's awful. But the more research I did, apparently it's a true story. Apparently in parts of the trenches on Christmas Day, they came up and they spoke, and they had other parts not so much, and apparently in other parts people did come up thinking that it was a truce on that day, and they unfortunately got killed. But I found actually, I saw it differently. Yes, 100%, in the sense it's fantastic, fundraising, they made a lot of money. Yes, they're raising awareness, but I would kind of take it a little bit further from that, is that actually it raises not just awareness, but kind of makes it a link. Like, just as you were saying about how we don't want to necessarily have the darkness, it's the idea that there can be beauty even in the ugliest of things. And that is something that we need to bear even more in mind at Christmas. In that, when you're saying about doing a little thing for someone else, just to brighten up their day a little bit, you know, those kind of things. I think that's the message that came through a lot for me, is that even in the ugliest part of one of the ugliest wars, in honestly the saddest story, there was that glimmer of humanity. And that's the same when you're looking at Christmas, and even in the, you know, the most desperate of situations, if one person shows that little bit of kindness, it's that glimmer of humanity, and it's kind of that you can't necessarily keep that down. And so that was the message I took from it, and that's why, for me, yes, it is commercial, but it is a commercial, but, you know, it's kind of propagating that kind of feeling as well. And if people watch it and get the same impression that I did, and then go out that day and do something kind for someone else, whether it's just helping them pick up their bag, then, you know, that advert did more than just raise money for British Legion. It kind of made the world a little bit of a better place.
Just going to say, I love that point. I think that's a really, really nice way of looking at it. But I think, you know, everyone has got such interesting points, and it's great to get a variety of views. But I think all of this leads you to sort of the last thing I wanted to think about today, which is, it's probably the age-old question, like, what is Christmas really about? You know, at the end of that advert, you saw Sainsbury's say Christmas is for sharing. We've got loads of different campaigns, slogans going around at the moment, but what is the real meaning of Christmas? I think, Andy, this is something you definitely sort of wanted to talk about a little bit.
Which is boring everybody says. No, I mean, I think for me, I think the one element that's come out of today, and very much what you were alluding to earlier, and the sharing, and just simple things like knocking on a neighbour's door, I think is hugely powerful. And I think for me, you know, we all, you know, professionally very busy, and we're very, you know, running around like headless chickens a million miles an hour. For me, Christmas is about taking a step back and actually, you know, thinking, sparing a thought for others, and not just others that you work with through work, but actually the wider community. And it's you know, it is about sharing. I think sharing is a very good word, but it's about thinking. And it's you know, I do think, you know, I've got 2 young children now, and so Christmas has taken on a whole different sort of meaning the last sort of 5 or 6 years. But it is about the sort of the giving and the sharing. But I do also think that at Christmas we need to ensure that we are thinking of the wider community and the wider society as a whole. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but we do take the children to church. We do try and get them involved in other things, and I'm not trying to be holier than thou. But my point is that it is for me about looking at the broader community and just taking some time out to do something decent for somebody else. It sounds very trite and cliche, doesn't it? But that for me is what Christmas should be about. It's about sharing and giving and remembering.
I very much agree with that. When you look back on what we're actually celebrating, which was the birth of Christ, which was a glimpse of hope and birth of life in a way, and joy, and I think that's why that advert for me as well, when I first saw it, I actually immediately it was a time to allow you to actually dream that there is no war, that in an ideal situation you would be hugging and you'd be sharing and you'd be laughing with your enemies. And I think that's sometimes why Christmas is very difficult for people as well, because it's often not reality. But in the build-up, there's a time that we can hope and dream about that. And I think people's spirits are lifted around Christmas time, and people are wanting to be more community orientated, and there's that drive to be, and it's an exciting time to see people actually stepping out and wanting to do things and wanting to make change and being more friendly and thoughtful towards other people. So Christmas to me is a time for celebrating life and seeing everybody as individuals rather than what the world often paints each person as your sort of perfect exterior and what your status is and how you dress and how you look and everything that defines or what can define a person, strip back to realising the beauty inside everyone and seeing that beauty in sometimes the strangest places. So to me it's about hope and seeing life.
I know that we're meant to be talking purely about Christmas and what it means, what we can do. I would like to make, again, a slightly controversial point in that I think it shouldn't just be about Christmas. In that, yes, at Christmas, it's a time of love, it's a time of family, so you do think about other people, you do have that awareness, and that's all really, really important. But I would say what's even more important is holding on to that for the rest of the year. Because if you just give once a year and it's, that's amazing and I applaud you for it, but I think it's better to kind of have that consciousness throughout the year and that kind of idea that you want to help throughout the year, and to hold on to that really.
Well, I think Christmas has its different meanings for everyone. Everyone has their own thoughts and beliefs on what Christmas is about and what Christmas is for. And I think it's easy for people who are in less fortunate situations to see everybody else celebrating Christmas and to see the media celebrating Christmas and to see society celebrating Christmas and to see that purely as a reminder of what they don't have. And I completely mirror your point that it shouldn't just be about Christmas, this should be about a year-long attitude and a lifetime-long attitude. But if Christmas and events like this and campaigns like the Sainsbury's advert are utilising Christmas as an opportunity to break that into our consciousness and to make us think about it, then I don't think that's a bad thing. But that's
what Ray was saying. I read a lovely quote from Bob Hope, and it said, my idea of Christmas, whether old-fashioned or not, is loving others. And then he said, come to think of it, why do we have to wait for Christmas to do that? And I just think that kind of sums it up. But unfortunately we're out of time, guys, but it would be so lovely if we could maybe have any questions from the audience, if anyone had anything they wanted to say, anything they wanted to ask our speakers today.
Can I say, how many?
Yeah, of course.
In some religions, you're supposed to give 10% of your earnings. Now, how many people adhere to that? And we think that, how many religions adhere to that? I mean, do you know that you're supposed to give 10%?
Yeah, sorry, I do know in some religions you're supposed to, but I think sort of getting into religion is such a contentious area, isn't it? And like many things in religion, a lot of people don't do them, but it's a great thing. People know lots of things about religion that they probably sort of are kind of irrelevant, but something like that would be a lovely thing for more people to know.
I'll be honest, I had no idea that was the case. That's always got to learn today.
And also with wills, for instance,
Yep.
when you make a will, then you shouldn't care so much how much you're giving to your family. 10% of that can go to charity. And a lot of lawyers do wills for nothing if you give money to charity.
Well, I know my wife works for an equine charity, and I know the vast majority of their income comes from legacies. And I think a lot of legacies goes to animal charities, actually. But no, I think also we, and I don't want to speak for everybody here, obviously, but from my point of view, I've been with the charity the last 2.5 years, and I think one of the most extraordinary elements of working for the charity for me is, we consume news all day, every day, and 9 times out of 10 it's pretty desperate, negative, downbeat. And actually the privilege of working in an organisation that I work in, certainly, is that you actually get to see how many extraordinary people around the UK, around the world, doing extraordinary things to support others. It's such a shame that it doesn't get more coverage, because I genuinely think that it would act as a springboard for others to get more involved. There's always more that can be done. I absolutely agree with you.
But heartbreaking commercials do bring the money in.
They do. As I said earlier, I think it's great that the Legion are going to earn an awful lot of money off the back of it. My view is I just wish it wasn't so overtly commercial in the manner in which it was done. But if it gets more people talking about it and it gets the debate, and that subsequently means that more people volunteer, raise money, fantastic. That can only be a good thing, because the end result is that more people are going to get supported.
Well, unfortunately, I think you have to work, and we see this in what we do as well, is that you do have to work in the society in which you are in. So unfortunately, Christmas now is much more commercialised. Our society is much more commercialised. Social media, TV, these things. We watch TV to be entertained. So if that's the medium you have to use in order to, in order to interact with people, then that's the medium you have to use. And I think they've used it as well as they could within the circumstances. And it is definitely commercial, but within a commercial, sorry to be so blunt, but within a, it's a commercial Christmas now. It is. So it's working within that, and it's still bringing that side of humanity within that commercialness. So that's where I kind of...
I agree, and I think I agree with you entirely, it is very commercial. My question would be, and I guess it's not one to necessarily going to answer, but everybody knows how horrific World War I was, but what not everybody sees are the positive outcomes of where the money goes. And my question would be, would people be more inclined to support volunteering if they could see the difference that it made with the positive outcomes? And I think some more of that might be quite nice to see, rather than looking back all the time, looking forward in a positive light and engender that positive feeling in potential fundraisers.
Maybe.
I don't know the answer.
But I feel that actually, when you look at a lot of fundraising videos and things to try and inspire people to give, that's normally the route they go down.
It is.
And that normally does well, but I'd be interested to see if they did an advert like that on mainstream that picked up so much, views and stuff, whether it would have the same, we'd only be able to tell really from the data. But I'd imagine that something like this, which is so emotional, would probably do quite well for that reason.
Well, coming back to your question of giving and adverts like that, I think really cause a reaction, and they build up a reaction in people, but actually seeing that reaction going into action is a hard thing to measure as well. And I think a lot of it is a reaction, and sometimes it's great that we feel and we think about other people that might be less fortunate, but the problem's still going to be there unless we all start making a bit of a change. And that change from, I was brought up in a Christian family, so I'm very, as a minimum in our family, it was always, sort of, as soon as we started making a wage, it was always known that 10% you would donate to whatever charity you wanted. But it never felt an effort, because I think it's wanting to have it from your heart rather than being told to do something. And that is about changing attitudes and actually wanting to try and help somebody around you, or spending a bit of time and actually wanting to put yourself out there to make a difference. That I think is very important.
Thank you so much. Grace, it's great, but unfortunately we have time for one more question. So,
I was going to say, I come from a sort of commercial property solicitor background, and I've worked at Magic Circle firms, I've worked at mid-tier firms, and the idea of commercial corporate responsibility has grown exponentially, I think, in the last 5 years or so. So at the bigger firms, we had pro bono systems where I'd go out and work on emergency housing applications and domestic violence situations. So I've had sort of on-the-ground experience of that. And then in sort of mid-tier firms, their programmes are still there, but to a lesser extent because they've got lesser resources behind them. So there's sort of pennies from heaven where you donate extra pennies over and above on your salary. That goes straight to different charities of your choice. But I do find that perhaps charities at the smaller end aren't aware that the bigger firms are starting to get more and more involved and want to have that sort of exposure. So do you guys find it difficult to approach bigger firms and to get that awareness and to get them to support you? Do you find that they're receptive to that?
Ours are, we're all about employment, so whenever we engage with a corporate, we go to the HR team first, and we never go to a corporate asking for money to begin with. We always go to a corporate through their HR team to help them support their employment programme, because they can employ from the wounded community, and that's what we're all about. So we talk to HR first, and we give them something. We offer them some strategic benefit to their business. And then from that, we then usually get an opportunity to go into the organisation through their corporate responsibility programme. So I think we're in quite a fortuitous position because we are about employment, so we can offer something to the corporate.
I think we're quite similar as well, because we're around food resources. We work with fruit and veg that would be thrown away because of aesthetics or gluts in the supply and demand markets. So we work with Waitrose, with Ocado, with Unilever and Eat, and they're all very supportive as well, because it's on their agenda. It's something that they're wanting to look at in food waste and food reduction and caring where things come from. But I imagine going to another corporate it's not on their agenda. I think it's pairing up with somebody that has like-minded values.
That's a really, really strong point, and especially when, from our perspective, dealing with something like that, which is so directly in with alcoholism, that's something that's quite difficult to break into, especially a corporate environment where alcohol, without being transparent, plays such a huge role in any social event or networking event or anything. Like the John Lewis advert we were talking before, I think post their advert, they now donate such an amount, I think, to the Adelphi penguin. I think that's the kind of penguin that was featured in the advert. But I think that's an area which we, as the National Association of Children Alcoholics, struggle with, trying to find our niche, and fashion and trends play a large part in that, which is a shame.
Well, I think what's interesting about domestic violence is that actually the office is one of the few places that usually the victim is away from the perpetrator. And actually there's a lot of campaigns going on at the moment within the government about highlighting the awareness to employers that actually, you know, they might be able to really help their employees who are suffering domestic violence. And I think that's really interesting. So a lot of what we try and do is, as well as obviously make fantastic partnerships, and we get sponsored by some amazing corporations, but what we try and do is we try and go into those corporations and talk to them and kind of highlight the importance of understanding what is domestic violence, you know, how can you pick it up, and if you do suspect it, what can you do about it, because that's often what we get asked as well. So I think with us it's a bit of both, in the sense that we're really grateful for anything they can give us, but we actually really need to get to them as well. And sometimes that can be easy and sometimes that can be difficult. It really depends on who you speak to and the kind of culture that they have as well. But hopefully it's also like, as awareness increases, it'll be easier as well.
An organisation where I started the idea of receiving something in return for giving. And that's, I don't know if you've heard about the Royal College of Art. You get a famous artist, or you may get a poor artist. You might get a poor artist's picture back. In return for paying £50, £100, you might get an artist that's worth thousands of pounds. Now, I started this in 1990, and it's grown very, very large now. And the same as the Kersler Trust. I don't know if you know the Kersler Trust for prisons. That started as a small event in the 60s, and because you're giving pictures and exhibitions in return, you get a lot back. I mean, they get thousands back. And the idea of, I'm going to give £25 and buy a blind envelope, don't know what's in it, and I might receive £1,000, is quite exciting. It's a gamble, and you receive a lot when you gamble in that way.
Yeah, thank you. And Lex, we have time for one last question at the back, I think.
It was more about the difference between exploitation and patronism. So with Bob Geldof and the Christmas songs that are coming out, there's a lot of stake lately for being incredibly patronising to Africa. One thing that you were saying that it might be viewed as quite overly sympathetic, the add to the sort of romanticism of the First World War. But at what point does it change when if the victim of exploitation gets the money from that piece of exploitation, so the money going from that ad to the Red Cross or to the British Legion or things like that? At what point does that I mean, at what point does it stop being exploitation and start being aid?
I think that's a really interesting concept because it often depends on
on what you're dealing with. For example, going back to when we started my company, we had CNN and BBC4 saying, can we do a documentary in your kitchen? Because we were working with trafficked women and coming out of quite abusive situations, they were wanting to document and look at the woman's life and sort of run it as before and after, basically. And I kept on saying no, because if I'm actually genuinely trying to help these women, then it would be great for publicity in terms of the brand and things, but if I was actually trying to genuinely help them, documenting their life and what they were trying to turn away from is just sort of hitting it back in their face. So, but there'll be other charities that are working again with people sort of that were ready and they were at a place, and some people are incredibly proud of how they've changed. And so I think it's really just judging the case to case. And I imagine if you were doing a sort of dogs campaign, doing a video about dogs sort of, and then rescue dogs, it might not be exploitation, but in different cases I think it can be a real point of just looking at actually what you're trying to do, and if making them a case of charity, if that's actually going to help that or not. That's where I would draw the line.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying very quickly, I think the defining point for me is if the individual that is potentially being exploited is worse off as a result of the piece, then I think we've failed in our moral obligation. I've got a case study of a chap called Sean who's homeless, and I'm conscious of time. He's part of our Walking Home for Christmas campaign to support homeless veterans. Now, he's very happy for us to talk to the media about his story and his ordeals. But then the journalist turns around to me and says, actually, can we focus a little bit more on why his wife left him? And at that point, it begged belief, quite frankly. And from my point of view, at that point, having seen how visibly upset he's been with me in the past when talking about sensitive issues like that, there's no way I'm about to hand him over to a journalist. So, at that point, my view and my decision was, actually this has gone from Sean supporting us because he wants to support other homeless veterans to actually having a detrimental effect on him as an individual. And that is the point where actually you stop and you've lost your moral compass.
And with that ad specifically?
So that ad specifically, I imagine for a lot of soldiers watching that, they're probably thinking you're sort of mocking what I've gone through. But I don't, again,
I don't know. It's so difficult. We live in a commercial world. You're absolutely right. And at the end of the day, there's no individual that was in that commercial that you could class as being exploited. There isn't. So the potential exploitation comes from the notion of what you are portraying. The flip side of that is if the Legion are walking away with best part of 7 figures of fundraising as a result of the partnership, and they're obviously going to help 10,000 families, then we're going full circle to say, well, is part of Christmas about supporting families? So it can be argued either way. I think for me the line is if an individual if it's to the detriment of that individual or that group of people, then you've gone too far.
Great stuff. Thank you guys so much for taking time to come out today and all of your amazing contributions. And thank you to our panel, really inspirational guys and some really great views. So thank you, and thank you to the Society of Young Philanthropists for making this all possible. What a great start to Giving Tuesday. Thanks.
Well done you for organising.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hi everyone, I think most of you know me. My name is Alexandra and I put together the Society of Young Philanthropists as part of an organisation called the World Council of Peoples for the United Nations. Anyway, today is the first of an event that is being hosted, in fact, worldwide, to mark Giving Tuesday, which is a day that the UN Foundation want to start and make annual to follow Black Friday, which I don't know if any of you noticed in the press last week, and Cyber Monday, and so Giving Tuesday is kind of a response to that, and they want everyone around the world to give. So I really want to thank you all for being here today. This event will be broadcast on the UN Foundation website. And basically, so this evening, I know we're normally known for our party, so firstly it's amazing to have you all here today to help spin the other side of that and to help educate people and to take part in such a very interesting discussion, so thank you for coming, and thank you to all our amazing group of brands who are all selling for charity, and tonight we are having a party to celebrate that, so all come down if you want. But thank you so much again for today, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Well, where is it?
In Soho. I'll give you the address afterwards. Thank you.